Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Colleen Meyer with Meyer and Mintz bringing you Fearless in Pink, the podcast. And we have an amazing guest today. Her name is Megan Rios, and I've known Megan for about maybe a year or something. And You guys, she's an amazing person. She is the president of Rios Design Studio, LLC, which is a landscape architecture and design firm based in Bakersfield, California. And you need to go to her website because some of the stuff that her company creates, some of the designs are absolutely going to blow your mind. Rios Design Studio owners. She's co-owner with her husband. She's president. He's vice president. And design landscape architects for 50 years of combined experience in the profession of landscape architecture. Welcome, Megan. Let's talk a little bit more about you. So how did you get into landscaping?
That's a cool story. So I got accepted at Cal Poly Pomona. Just so you know, my husband went to San Luis Obispo. There's always a fight with that one. I took the architecture program and didn't pass and didn't know what to do. I'm like, was beside myself. What do I do? So I went to, they had a little, they have a career center, and I went to the career center and I put in all my things that I thought I wanted. You don't know when you're in college how much things cost. And I came up two things: beautician or landscape architect. And my father was not going to go and pay for beautician school. So I'm like, fine, I'll do landscape. And then I realized that was really what I loved to do. I love the design and architecture, but it was, when I look back, like in first and second grade, I could see that I could really draw a tree. It wasn't just a stick with a circle, although I do that now, but it looked like a tree. It had branches. It was, understandable. I love to draw. I doodle. We used to have our desk at school, and you doodle all over your desk and all over your when you would cover your books, and you doodle all over that. That's what I would do, and totally enjoyed that. So I was able to jump from architecture and skip a semester or a year actually, and then go into landscape architecture, and loved it a lot. I wouldn't say I was the top student, but you don't have to be to enjoy it, right? But I really did have a good time doing that. And then I graduated, and I remember my dad, he's like, okay, you have a month, you have to go find a job. And I went, what? So I found a job. And I told him, I go, Dad, I'm making $5 an hour. And he went, what? But obviously that has turned into different, much more money after an amount of time. But I really loved it. I loved being in a firm. I loved drawing. Back in the day when I would design or draw for others as a draftsperson, it was actually on a drafting board. And you would have either the Mylar, or you would have the tissue, they called it, or you would have a regular paper, the paper that they use. And we would draw from that. And now, having done that for many, many years, after graduating and working for a couple companies, I worked for quite a few companies in Orange County, and then moved to Pomona, where I actually worked for a teacher of mine. He actually hired me. That was awesome. And I loved working for him. And then I went ahead and I worked in Riverside, and that's where I met my husband, and he was working at the same place. And we were fortunate enough to have a coffee break where we would go. If you've been downtown Riverside, you know how lovely it is. It really is, folks. Beautiful town. And it was we were actually working in the city hall. If you know where City Hall is, right across from the Mission Inn. Right. And we would walk down the street. We'd go to a place called Aromas. I don't know if it's still there or not. It was a little coffee house, and we'd have a half an hour to sit down and sort of talk about everything. Where a lot of times when you're working, you can do that, but we really had a chance to do it back and forth, and we just found out that we really connected. And so worked there for a couple of years, and I moved to Orange County. He stayed there for a little bit longer, and then he moved to Orange County and went to some different places. So we worked in one place, and then it took us marriage and kids in Bakersfield to make us work in another place together. So, but it was really a great opportunity to work for a lot of different firms, especially down in Southern California, a lot of different things doing. I had a chance to work on the Rio when it was just new, the pool area. And so that's when, they were just starting with the beach entry. That was back then, that was very new. And then recessions come along and you lose your job. I got married in 92 and we were living in Costa Mesa and pretty much had some jobs. I worked with BIA. You know who BIA is? Building Industry Association. They're a big housing group organization, and I worked with them a lot when I was in Riverside, and got involved with. They have an educational arm called HBC, Home Builders Council, and then they also have a marketing called Sales and Marketing, I think, committee. I'm not sure what the C is, so I apologize. It's been a while, but I was really involved in that, and I was lucky to have bosses that allowed me to do marketing because I just like to go out and meet people. Wasn't really looking to do that for myself, but really looking to sort of, just get out, meet people, get a chance to join a board. That's what I always say. If you're going to join something, jump right in, get in, and you really get to know everybody. And then, so I went through that, stay-at-home mom, have 2 children while we were in Costa Mesa, and they don't remember it by the beach. It was nice. But, of course, you're living in an apartment with 2 kids. Couldn't really afford that. And we ended up moving to Bakersfield to be with my husband's family. His mom had been diagnosed with cancer, and unfortunately, by the time we got there, she had passed, but it got us there. We found Bakersfield incredibly affordable. As much of Riverside was at the time. And so we've been living here for over 20 years. That's scary, right? When you start saying 20 years or 30 years or 50 years, you're like, whoa. When you're in high school, oh man, that was 50 years ago. You're like, oh, right? Maybe not exactly.
So you guys started your business, and I know when you start a business, sometimes it takes, so much time to start picking up and moving. How much time from the time you started Rios Designs did you really see this improvement? What was the time frame? What did you do to market? And how did you drive clients in those first and early years?
I was really fortunate. I was a stay-at-home mom here in Bakersfield for about 10 years. So my kids, when it was about time, I had done some Pampered Chef. And so if you're a stay-at-home mom, give yourself an opportunity to learn to do something different. And that was really important because I had a great director who understood sales and could teach it, that there's a benefit and there's a feature, and you look for people who are excited, right? And when you have those people who are excited, then you would try to get them to book, and then you would have a party, and then you would try to book some more. So I got an opportunity to do that. And I did that for 5 years. I was a director, but it wasn't making money. I was doing it for fun, and I was doing it because all the tools are so cool. And at the time, I was doing a lot of cooking. Yeah, I have 2 kids, a husband, I'm cooking. So my husband actually saw that there was a need for a landscape architect, and it was for a local multidisciplinary firm. It was called McIntosh and Associates. It's still here in town in Bakersfield. And I remember going in being so scared, and I hadn't been working for a while, and sort of showing this is what I've done in the past. I had a couple of people say, "Oh, come do some yard work," or some changes in my front or backyard. I think mostly is the back, and so I did them. And he hired me, and that was really important because I had just been working at just a landscape firm, and a landscape firm just does landscape. But here I had a multiple, so I could walk through the offices and go, "Oh, that's what's coming up. Do I get a chance to do that? Oh, so tell me about title work, or how do you explain planning, or what's traffic engineering, or what are you doing here, and grades and changes." Not that I didn't know that already, having taking the test. I had my license and everything by then, but just really getting a sense of that. And I worked there for 4 years. And so I became Megan at McIntosh, which was kind of cool. And then the 2008 recession came, and I lost my job. And a month later, my husband did. So we're like, what do you do? We're in Bakersfield. There's not a whole lot going on here. And I had fortunately at McIntosh and Associate had one job where they just had it. They were just at McIntosh for landscape architect. So I was able to talk to that person for, I'm sure, a really great price for them. I said, yes, I want to work with you. And it was back in the day when they had redevelopment. You remember those? We won't get it again, but that was back in the day. And so we had a chance to start working on some stuff downtown Bakersfield and work with the city. And so that really kind of started people doing that. And just to kind of back up for a second, while we were here in Bakersfield and I was a stay-at-home mom, my husband was here and he was telecommuting from Costa Mesa, where his work was. It was Nuvis, and they're still there in Costa Mesa. And so for 10 years, he was doing that, going back and forth. And so he was
every day. Did he do it every day?
Or he would do it like once a week, and then it was once a month, and it was sort of like that.
Oh gosh.
But he was here as a landscape architect, but nobody knew because he was working down there and he was working out of the house. So this really, being able to work at McIntosh allowed me to really know the city and get to know the right people, specifically other civil engineers and other architects that I could work with, that we could work with. So that got us started with being able to do that. And then when we first got started, actually, my husband had to do a lot of cold calls. He never wants to have to do that again. It probably took a good 5 years to really be recognized. Not that we weren't doing work, but we weren't really we had another architect in town. His name was Ralph Adame, and everybody knew him. He had been here for 20 years, been working with everybody, and he passed.
Oh gosh.
And people were like, what do we do? Where do we go? And oh, we're here. And so we were really blessed to sort of be able to take what he had started and moved on. And that gave us, again, a lot of opportunity to work with a lot of different architects and civil engineers and developers here in town. And so now we are kind of, known after 11 years, but it was about 9 or 10 years when you sort of really get going. The other thing we did is early on, we connected with CLCA, which is California Landscape Contractors Association. And Jim and I had been involved with it when we were in Riverside, but Jim had connected with a landscape contractor and they wanted to go to the city council and talk about AB 1881, which is about the Water Conservation Act. And back then it was enacted, but there was no enforcement. So along comes, I think it was 2013, and they're like, you have to do it now. And we were already up on it, or at least had a better understanding. A lot of landscape contractors they were doing the same old, right? This is the way we've always done it. Why can't we use spray? And you're like, well, you can. So we moved from spray to drip irrigation. I'm sure you've seen a lot of that in your neck of the woods.
Yeah.
And that connection with other professionals really, I think, if you're getting started, do yourself a favor and connect with organizations, number one, in your own field.
Yeah, that's right.
Now there's ASLA is American Landscape Architects Association, but they don't have anything active here. So that wasn't a direction we could go. Kern County's a little apart. We have this distance over the mountains to Hone, and even when you go through Fresno, where back in the day, Riverside was like that, right? And now it's just, you're like, am I there yet? Yeah, I'm there. So I think we were sort of in a nice little bubble. We are really blessed. We don't have a lot of competition. We do have some, but we're different than a lot. We have LDI, which is Landscape Development Incorporated, and they are design build. And what's that mean is they will design it, and then they have crews that build it. Okay. Well, Jim and I at Rios Design Studio, we only design it. So our job is to design it so it gets through municipalities, gets through the city, gets through the county, gets through whatever DSA, and we know what is necessary to go ahead and show that this is the landscape and how it needs to be installed. So we don't install it. all we do is design it. So it goes through municipality, passes it. And then if we do have the chance, we get a chance to verify that it's installed per plan. And if it's not, why it's not installed per plan.
Megan, you said something to me that I noticed that you seemed that you had a lot of opportunities, and is this a male? This is probably like a male-dominated field, right?
Very much.
It seems like a lot of males along your journey helped open those doors for you. Do you feel that was the case for you, or did you feel that maybe it was a little harder, or was it a helping hand along the way for you in this industry?
No, I like working with males. I like working with females, that too. Mm-hmm. But I enjoy that, because not only is part of working with civil engineers, they have a different little attitude, and you have architects, and then you have even landscape contractors. Like, you're a woman, what do you know? And you're like, well, guess what? I'm your landscape architect, and I know a little something. So you're going to get some of that, but I really didn't have a lot of that, even with, owners kind of like, oh, well, you're a girl, you do the secretary stuff. I'm like, okay, whatever.
Sounds like you didn't have it very much of that.
You know what? I think it's probably attitude, because I don't really push that I'm female. Mm-hmm. I think it's obvious. And I think it's just, it's important to listen to everybody. Mm-hmm. There are times that I've had to ask, landscape contractors, and when they're good, you'll say, what would you suggest? And if you listen to them, and you'll tell them, I need that tree, and it doesn't happen often, but I had that issue. I need that tree moved here because it needs to be in the center of the window. And then they begin to understand, I have a reasoning for doing that. It's not just willy-nilly, some little fairies tell me what to do. I have forest lines, and I have certain reasons why I have to design a certain way. And I think in most cases, when you give a good reason, that's acceptable. And I think it's how you, sort of bring it to them, that you say, what do you suggest? Okay, well, this is why I have that, or that's a good idea, let's do that, or no, not so much.
If you could go back, Megan, let's go back, maybe back to college, or as you're going through your journey,
right?
To us early on, what were some of the lessons that you learned going into this company or in the early years? And what would you do differently if you can go back?
I had a lot of, we're talking about male friends in college. I enjoyed hanging out with them. And that was because of them, I was able to get my first job, and loved working with them. I was in a position where we had designers who knew what they were doing, and I would ask, and they would tell me why you do certain things the way you do. So, when you have someone to mentor you, it's always imperative to make a relationship with them and ask and say why you're doing this. And they were always really open to explaining why things need to be done a certain way. And I think creating those boundaries help my understanding of design to make it in a better way, and sort of learn those lessons early. I think that was helpful. I think it's always important to be curious. When I was working in Riverside with my husband, everybody was sort of my age, and we would go out, and I was doing a lot of model homes at the time. And it was in the 80s. So you remember when there's model homes, you'd walk in one, and there was the Ralph Lauren look, the duck and all the jewel tones. And then you'd have a French country, and that was all flowery and light blue and yellow. And then you'd have another one. I forget what that one was. So you kind of have to learn the trends in your craft. And at the time, I loved doing model homes because it's like creating Disneyland. And so we would go and visit the model homes, and I would explain, you need to have a tree here on the side here, and you need to do that. And it was so fun to go into these homes while other people were looking at it, and you're, oh, we can eat outside. I'm thinking, you can eat outside now, but whatever, buy a house to do so. But the romance you kind of create, at least in model homes, and it is that creating that romance, that this would be the house where you would have someone come, your neighbors would want to come to your house, your kids would want to have the parties at your house would be the place, if that's what you're looking for, is that kind of camaraderie and creating that community. So, and we did a lot of wonderful things together and traveled together, and it's always important to make friends, not only in your same group, but also, like I was saying, jump into an organization. And when you do, take some time to look at it, and then nothing wrong with getting on the board and getting involved, because that is the one place where if people don't understand what you do, and a lot of times with landscape, they don't. I'll just say landscape architect, and they, oh, that's so cool. Yeah, right. Because I do it every day, so it doesn't seem so cool, but I can see where other people work because they have an idea in their head what it is, whether it's true or not. But it's always important when you're on some kind of board is that you learn to do something well. And then if they know you can do a task that they don't know, that they do know about, whether it's make sure an event goes well, do the treasurer's report, do the secretary's report, whatever that is, there's all those different positions we have in our board. Then they begin to know that you can get done what you know, even though they don't know. Like, I don't understand insurance. I couldn't exactly say I know exactly what you do either, but I do trust you because I know I've worked with you on a board, and when I ask you to do something, you get it done. So if you can get that done, well, then you know what you're doing, right? And I think that really establishes great relationships to do that. Like you were saying, when people get started, what does it take? It takes a while, but it takes a while because you have a foundation of getting to know your community. I don't really want to have to move, but if we had to, it'd be hard to start again. But with that, I would get really involved. I get to know my community, so they got to know me.
What you're talking about with getting to know people and networking in your community. When I was working on my dissertation and I was doing a study on women business owners, we found that women business owners, not everybody, can't put everybody in the same basket, right? But there's a chunk of women business owners, especially new people that are new, starting their business. Maybe they have a side gig that they're working. They're uncomfortable networking. They don't know how to network. And because they don't know how to network, they don't either go, or they go and they stand in the corner, or they're a wallflower. So when you're saying get out there and get involved and, join a board, join an organization, like you were talking about, professional organizations, women's organizations, whatever happens to be, and get out there. Did you find when you were networking that it was a little tough for you, or did you always feel it was comfortable, be able to network?
I did have a chance to go to Ireland and kiss the Blarney Stone, and I got my nose coming up. Yeah. So I naturally like to talk to people, and I have a stepmom who, she's the kind of person, we would be in the store and she'd just turn around and start talking about the weather, or, oh my God, that's the cutest little kid. So I'm used to that. But you're right. It's a comfort level. Because I think, again, being curious, tell me if you want to know about somebody else. And if you want to know the biggest secret about networking, don't talk about yourself. Ask them all the questions. Everybody wants to talk about themselves, right? Going along those lines, we haven't got quite to it yet in NABO, but just becoming the president here at the local NABO Bakersfield chapter. I have noticed, I was reading a magazine article online from Inc. You know how they have it? I'm on Google, and you're like, okay, I can read something that fast. It's not a book. You're right. I'm not ready for that. And they were talking about how COVID, and we'll just kind of move into COVID now, how COVID has that 15 months, specifically in California, has really gotten people so they're so used to being comfortable, balled up, that they haven't really, networking is something you have to learn.
Mm-hmm.
and that you have to practice. Even like your own work, you have to practice it. You have to work it. And as you work it, you get better. I'm seeing that even for my own organization, and that NABO is one, and I'm also still very involved in CLCA, is that it's membership. It's really all about the networking, and you have to really, that will be one of the things I'm going to be working on with my board, is establish a very comfortable networking style. Know your own elevator pitch, and that can change all the time, but know it. And know your organization pitch, because so often, and you probably feel this way with NABO, it's so big. NABO is a national organization. It's actually international, but let's just stay in the United States. So it's a national organization, and then it's a state organization. We have a NABO California, and then it's a local. So there's lots of umbrellas upon umbrellas. And you know that when you join an organization, you're not always joining because you understand who the organization is. You're joining because there's some people you like and you want to hang with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, those are kind of cool ladies. I know when I go there, one of those 2 or 3 people that I know, they're going to be there. I can hang with them. I can have my wine. I can sit next to them. I can sit next to somebody new. I'm comfortable. There's a comfort level there. But we do need to learn how to network. And that is something we really all have to work on. And that's looking people in the eye and shaking their hands. If we're going back to that, it's having a card and being able to give it. It's being able to remember their name. Mm-hmm. And if you have a name tag, wear it. That's important, so they can see. They're going to forget your name. I'm kind of lucky. I have the red hair. Okay. Yes, I have a wonderful stylist and she keeps me this red. Mm-hmm. But yes, this is my natural color. So I wear it. But so sometimes people might remember me, but I'm not always good at remembering. So it's really helpful if you have some name tag from whatever organization you're in, or get your own name tag. And just always have it and say, this is who I am, and I'm with Rios Design Studio, and people will make that connection a lot better. Yeah. And then when you're talking, people get to know them. Where are you from? Have you lived here all your life? Did you always do this? I mean, the paths, and I'm sure you know this from your podcast, the paths people take are really amazing. I kind of went down one line. I went to school in landscape architecture. I got my degree. I started working. I got my license. And I'm still doing it. Where most people, I got an English degree, and then I worked for an insurance company, and then I did this, and you're like, wow, what a path! And then you ended up here. How did that go? So I would have to say, I try to tell my children, you don't have to go the straight path your father and I did, but go a path and find your own way, because that's the exciting part.
I think so too. And going back when you were talking about networking, we always get all a stack of business cards, and we had a speaker on yesterday.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And she was talking about, taking those cards and doing something. Don't just let them collect dust, put them in a customer relations management tool of some kind, and, follow up and call them or send them an email, just, hey, or, it's nice meeting you and talking to you. So I think, like you were talking about, networking, getting cards, following up, those are all amazing, amazing things. Now, let's talk about you for a second and your company. If somebody said, I want to get a hold of Megan, how do I do it? And I know we're going to put the information into our comment section here on social media, but also with the podcast that will go out later on today, the audio portion. Perfect. So do you want to share,
Sure. Your easiest ways to get a hold of me at Megan, it's MEGAN at Rios Design, RIOSDESIGN.com. Always get a hold of me there. We have an office number 661-835-9259. And then I have a cell number 661-431-2801. Now, mind you, if I don't know your number, you leave a message. Because like anybody else, we have lovely spam risks all the time and people trying to call us. So that's what you just figure. I let it ring. I don't know that number. And then you go, oh, that's that person. I will answer and get back to you. And that's how you get a hold of me. we are fortunate, and that's why I have my green screen. I work in my house, and my office isn't always clean, so you don't have to see it. In my office, I'm right next to my husband, and we have 2 little puppy dogs, his little entourage chihuahuas who sleep in here. So if you hear anything snore, that's them. I have 2 children in their 20s who are living here. My son will be going back to San Jose State, and my daughter's here working. And so there might be in and out. But, I kind of like it. I don't know. What's been nice is you pay so much for a building, your home, and you don't spend any time in it. So we have done that. I can't say that I wouldn't like to get an office because I've been here for a long time now, and I'm kind of ready to kind of get out. That's me. My husband could stay here. He's like, you go right ahead. I'm not going. I'm like, okay, that's fine. So there, sometimes it's nice to have an office. Sometimes it's nice to be home. There are pluses and minuses to both. So we've been here in Bakersfield for 20 years and enjoyed it. And like I said, gotten involved in a couple organizations. I think it's just important to be involved in your community, however you choose to be. It doesn't take that much to get involved. It really doesn't.
No, it really doesn't. Well, Megan, thank you so much for coming on to Fearless and Pink, our podcast.
Oh, that went so fast.
And live here on our social media platforms. So thank you so much. And you guys, we're going to put Megan's information. I already have her email and her website in the chat. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat later on, and I can get a hold of Megan. We can answer them for you, or you can get a hold of her directly. No problem at all. All right. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you so much, Colleen. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. I love speaking with you all the time. Till we see each other again. You have a great weekend.
You too.